Welcome to this explainer. Okay, we're jumping right into something completely fascinating today. Based on the incredible microbiology lectures of Dr. Amr El-Zawali, we're going to look at human immunity, but through a totally gripping lens. I want you to imagine your body isn't just a biological machine, but a heavily fortified home. And outside this home, there is a relentless, never-ending siege. The attackers are pathogens, bacteria, viruses. It's basically a microscopic zombie apocalypse, and it's happening every single second of your life. Okay, let's dive into this. If you were truly preparing to defend your home against a zombie horde, what would you actually do? You wouldn't just stand at the front door with a baseball bat, right? I mean, you'd need walls, you'd need alarms, you'd need frontline guards, and you'd absolutely need a highly trained, specialized military backup just in case that perimeter gets breached. Well, as Dr. El-Zawali points out, this perfectly mirrors exactly how your immune system is structured. To survive this microscopic invasion, your body relies on two completely distinct defense forces. First up, we have your innate immunity. These are your frontline grunts. They're fast, they're immediate, but they are, well, totally nonspecific. They honestly don't care what kind of zombie is at the gate. They just attack broadly. Oh, and they have zero memory of the fight. Then, backing them up, we have your adaptive immunity. This is your specialized military. It's slower to deploy, we're talking days to get ready, but it is highly specific. It targets exact pathogen structures, which we call antigens, and crucially, it has long-term memory. Once it defeats a specific zombie strain, it remembers exactly how to kill it forever. So let's look at the very first layer of defense, the physical barriers. Your skin is your fortress wall. It's coated in tough keratin, making it incredibly difficult for microbes to penetrate. Then you have mucous membranes acting as sticky traps, covering an astonishing 200 to 300 square meters inside your body. In your lungs, you have the mucociliary escalator, this wild system of tiny hairs constantly sweeping invading particles up and out. But what if a zombie actually breaches the wall? Well, that's where the complement system kicks in. This is a brilliant surveillance tripwire system made of about 30 different proteins produced by your liver. When activated, these proteins literally punch holes right into the bacterial cell membranes, destroying the invaders the moment they step foot inside. But sometimes the breach is just too big for the tripwires alone. Enter the innate first responders, the neutrophils. These are your intelligent agents, and they have one of the most intense, hardcore defense mechanisms in all of biology. It's called netosis. When a neutrophil senses an overwhelming invader, it actually commits a highly unusual form of cell suicide. It literally spews out its own internal chromatin, its DNA and histones, along with toxic antimicrobial proteins, to cast a physical net over the advancing zombie horde, trapping them right in place so they can't spread. And this brilliantly illustrates the visceral reality of that process. Look at that scanning electron microscope capture. That massive yellow mass, that's the neutrophil. The green web-like structure spreading outwards is the net it just deployed, literally made out of its own DNA. And those little blue pill shapes caught in the web are the bacterial zombies. They're completely immobilized, this prevents the infection from spreading, and basically leaves the bacteria as sitting ducks for other immune cells to come by and swallow them up. But what happens if a viral zombie manages to sneak past those nets and actually infects one of your own cells? Well, this calls for a completely different kind of frontline soldier. Notice those yellow-orange cells with the long, reaching arms, those pseudopod extensions? Those are natural killer, or NK cells. They are the elite, merciless assassins of the innate immune system. Their entire job isn't to hunt the loose zombies. No, their job is to hunt down your own host cells that have already been compromised and overwhelmed by the virus. As Dr. El-Zawali famously puts it in his lectures, the natural killer cell effectively yells, "I give you mercy," right before it strikes. The NK cell makes the ultimate tough call. It recognizes that the infected host cell is a lost cause and is basically about to become a factory for more viruses. So it injects lethal cytotoxins, specifically perforins and granzymes, directly into the infected cell. This forces the infected cell to neatly package itself up and die, completely halting the spread of the zombie virus inside your fortress. Now, to manage all this absolutely chaotic fighting at the breach, your cells really need to communicate. But they don't have radios. They use chemical signals, and there are three main types you should keep track of. Cytokines act as the overall commanders. They regulate immunity and give orders. Think of them as the trainer's whistle, telling the attack dogs when to attack and when to stand down so inflammation doesn't get completely out of control. Chemokines provide the GPS coordinates, directing backup immune cells exactly to where the infection is. And interferons, they're the intruder alert alarm.
When a cell is infected by a virus, it blasts out interferons to warn all its neighbors to lock their doors and step up their antiviral defenses.
So, the frontline battle is raging, but remember that slower, highly specialized adaptive military we talked about earlier? They need intelligence to know exactly what they're fighting. That's the job of the antigen-presenting cells, or APCs, like dendritic cells and macrophages. These guys act as the intelligence gatherers on the battlefield. They wander the front lines, consuming the dead zombies, and then they process the zombie parts to show to the high command.
Let's walk through exactly how this biometric identification system works. Step 1 is phagocytosis. The APC literally eats the zombie invader. Step 2 is degradation. Powerful enzymes inside the APC chop the enemy up into tiny little pieces. And step 3 is presentation. The APC takes those tiny fragments, which, remember, we call antigens, and physically mounts them on its own outer surface as intel. It then travels away from the battlefield and heads straight to the lymph nodes to deliver this critical information.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the larger strategy. While the innate frontline grunts have been fighting and dying in the trenches, the adaptive system has been quietly preparing in the lymph node garrisons. It takes about 3 to 4 days for this system to fully deploy because it is entirely custom-built for the exact zombie strain currently attacking. Once those antigen-presenting cells arrive with their biometric intel, the heavy artillery is finally unleashed. This highly specialized arsenal is made up of lymphocytes. First, you have the T helper cells, also known as CD4-positive cells. These are your intelligence officers. They look at the zombie intel and release cytokines to coordinate the entire strike. Then you have the cytotoxic T cells, or CD8-positive cells. These are targeted assassins that hunt down specific infected cells based entirely on the intel. And finally, you have the B cells. If T cells are the soldiers, B cells are the weapons factories. Their entire job is to produce massive amounts of custom-designed munitions called antibodies. And when I say massive amounts, I really mean it. 2,000. Once a B cell gets the exact intel from a T helper cell, it differentiates into what's called a plasma cell. And a single activated plasma cell can pump out 2,000 highly specific antibodies every single second. That's just wild. These are dumped straight into your bloodstream, flooding the battlefield with targeted munitions designed to seek out and stick to the specific zombie invaders. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how these munitions actually operate in the field. Take a rhinovirus. Without antibodies, it can easily attach to your cells. But with antibodies, those little Y-shaped proteins, it gets completely coated and neutralized. It literally can't infect anything anymore. Or consider an IgM antibody. It has multiple binding sites, allowing it to grab onto several bacterial zombies at once, cross-linking them into giant clumps. This makes it incredibly easy for the cleanup crew, the macrophages, to come by and swallow a whole group of neutralized zombies in one single bite. Now, once the infection is cleared and the zombies are finally defeated, most of those activated T and B cells die off, but not all of them. A select few transform into memory cells. This is your ultimate insurance policy. These memory cells linger in your body for decades. If that exact same strain of microscopic zombie ever tries to invade your fortress again, these memory cells will recognize it instantly. They skip that whole 3 to 4 day prep time and launch a devastating counterattack so fast that you probably won't even realize you were exposed. But to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought based on Dr. Al-Zwali's lectures. We've seen how powerful, how merciless, and how destructive this immune arsenal is. It literally drops nets of toxic DNA, punches holes in cells, and commands assassins to execute your own infected tissue. So, what happens when communication breaks down? What happens when these elite assassins mistakenly identify a harmless particle as a threat, causing an allergy? Or worse, what happens when inappropriate neutosis occurs and the immune system turns its devastating weapons against the fortress itself? That is the terrifying reality behind autoimmune diseases like lupus. And it shows just how fine a line our bodies walk every single day between surviving the apocalypse and causing our own destruction. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.